Wearing a mask in Canada could now cost you up to 10 years in jail. The country's MPs have approved a bill banning people from hiding their faces during riots. That act was introduced last year, indeed, in response to trouble after an ice hockey match. Masked fans rampaged through the streets when the team lost the Stanley Cup. Let's talk about this. It's a controversial law. Michael Forin's on the line. He's a reporter with CJAD Radio in Montreal. Hi there. 10 years for wearing a mask. It does sound draconian no matter how you look at it. How do people in Canada see it then?
Well, you have to understand here, it's the Conservative government that is implementing this. They have a majority in the House of Commons at the moment. They also have a majority in the Senate, our upper house there. So, this law is going to pass. There's nothing stopping it now. But I think what it comes down to is that people are looking at this in a response of not only the Stanley Cup hockey match that happened about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, where Vancouver ended up losing and fans started going outside rioting on the streets. It cost millions and millions of dollars of damages in the streets of downtown Vancouver. And besides that, I think also what it comes down to is that there's been more pressure for this bill to go forward because of the student protests that have been happening in Montreal and across Quebec during the anti-tuition hike movement that happened within the last few months. So, that's really the sort of sentiment here is that this bill was needed in a sense. There are a lot of people who oppose it, especially members of parliament who are members of the opposition. But there hasn't been much outcry in terms of people being against this bill because of what you've seen in terms of the student protests in the last few months.
I guess the practical side, the people who are for it, they're saying, well, how can you arrest someone if you can't identify them, if their face is covered up? Is it going to make the streets any safer, though?
Not necessarily, because what we already have in terms of what municipalities, what major cities in Canada do currently, they have their own bylaws that are in place that are able to prevent, people from, during major riots or major acts of violence, or unlawful assemblies rather, from wearing masks in the first place. And if somebody's actually out there on the streets, bashing somebody's car window or smashing a storefront, there are laws that allow the police to obviously go in there and intervene and stop a criminal from doing something like that. This law, basically what it does is that it will criminalize people who are in protests if the police of that city deem the protest to be an unlawful assembly. Now, of course, that varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction in terms of how easy it is for the police force to say this is an unlawful assembly or it is a lawful assembly. But let's look at Montreal, for example, and across Quebec, in any major city in Quebec, where if you are 50 people or more in a peaceful protest and a non-violent protest, that could be deemed an unlawful assembly if you have not presented your itinerary and the directions of according to your protest routes to the police force of the municipality in Quebec before the protest has started. And that's what's causing a lot of controversy here, because people are saying, it's my inherent right to go out and express our opinions and be able to go to the streets and take to the streets in a peaceful manner, but this will be criminalizing even peaceful protests. So that's what the problem is here.
But when peaceful protests go bad, that's the question. How do you deal with it? Now, I know you've experienced a protest yourself. You're a great person to give us some insight. You covered those student protests in Canada that made all those global headlines. What makes a peaceful demonstration turn violent? Where's the blame lie, or is there any hard and fast to it?
I think there's two major, and that's a great question. There's two major people, groups that you can blame here. Of course, you have the people who are initiating the acts of violence here. It's usually a small group of black bloc anarchists who, they're really thugs in a sense, who go up and they start smashing windows of banks and of major retailers in the downtown area. They're the ones who really start the problem here. But then again, you could say, well, it's the police force who really initiate this violence because they might be not going after these people in the first place. They will be attacking peaceful protesters in the streets. They'll be going after them. When I was covering as a reporter the major, protests that were happening in downtown Montreal because of the students' protests that were happening there. Basically what I saw from my perspective is that I was even attacked for basically just filming police, for doing my job, for being able to report on a story. I didn't understand it at the time why that was happening, and it made me look upon the police, our police force in downtown Montreal, and say to them, I work with you on a daily basis. I do press conferences with you. I'm able to interact with the people on your force, but then when it comes to a protest situation, you guys attack me and you guys attack my colleagues as well. What's happening here? And to some extent, people said to me, well, you have to understand they're only doing their job. That can only go to a certain extent, I think.
Michael, we've got to leave it there, I'm afraid, but thanks ever so much for a bit of insight there from you. Michael Forin, reporter for CJAD Radio Montreal.
Thank you.